Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Read and Reread. I'm Angelia, and today I'm doing a Friday Reads on Sunday. We have come back from our travels, so I'm going to do a belated wrap up of my reading week. I hope you all are doing well, and if you celebrated Thanksgiving, I hope you had a lovely time visiting friends or family. We went up to North Texas to visit family and go to the family Thanksgiving and visit with my father-in-law for a few days because it's the first time we've gone into the holidays since my mother-in-law passed away in June. So we know it's going to be kind of an emotional, maybe a little rocky holiday season this year. But we did have a really nice visit. The trip up there was a nightmare. We had already factored in the extra time we knew it would take for the car charging stops because it's not like getting gas. You have to plug it in and it takes a little while. So that's fine. We knew that was coming. But then the traffic, the millions of traffic jams, accidents on the road, just so many slowdowns. It ended up taking 12 hours. 12 hours to get up there. I thought that had gone into the Bardo or something. I mean, it just went on and on and on and on. But anyway, we finally did get there. We had a nice visit. Thanksgiving Day, my daughter and her boyfriend made it, and so we got to see them as well, and they spent the night. And then they went camping Friday night, and it was cold, and they were in Central Texas for the camping. It was their first time camping, either of them, and they were all excited because they had this tent and this gear and all this stuff. And I guess they had fun. It was a chilly night, but they did have a good time, and I was happy when they were done and back safe in civilization. We also did get a chance to hit Recycle Books and Records in Denton, Texas, which is a wonderful well, no, I don't think there's anything new. I think it's just a used books, records, vinyl, CDs. And the funny thing was, we found out on Thanksgiving Day that my nephew had been in there shopping at the exact same time as we were in there, but we didn't see him. He was shopping in the vinyl, and I was up in the books on a different floor. And so that would have been fun if we'd run into each other, but we did see each other the next day for Thanksgiving. And I will be sharing what I got on that day and some other things that have come in since a month or so ago in a very soon upcoming haul video. And then after Thanksgiving, we did break up the trip on the way home and stayed a night over in Austin before we came all the way down to Corpus Christi. And so I also got to visit my favorite independent bookstore in Austin, Book People, and I did not buy any books. I had just bought 4 books at Recycle Books. I didn't buy any books at Book People. I browsed and enjoyed looking around, and I did buy some small gifts and stocking stuffers for other people, but I didn't buy anything for myself. So I need a big check mark in the credit box that I actually went to a bookstore and didn't buy anything. So let's talk about what I have been reading this week. I took 2 books with me on the trip, and one of them I didn't mean to finish. I just read The Thanksgiving Visitor, one of the 3 stories in this Truman Capote collection of holiday short stories, they're kind of long short stories. They're not really novellas. I'm saving the 2 Christmas stories for a little bit further into the month. And it is a memoir story. If you've ever read The Christmas Memory, Buddy and Miss Sook are the main characters once again. So it's himself as an elementary school age child, and his best friend is his distant cousin, Miss Sook, who's a woman in her 60s who is developmentally challenged. Their interests and enthusiasms are the same, and they frequently feel persecuted by the adults in the family. In this story, Miss Sook decides to invite young Buddy's tormentor from school to the family Thanksgiving dinner. She thinks that maybe the secret of conquering your nemesis is to get to know them better. And he thinks this is the worst idea he ever heard because this person mercilessly bullies him. It's a kid who is several years too old for the grade, who just torments him constantly, and he can't imagine how this could possibly be a good idea. That's all I'm going to tell you about the story. I enjoyed spending time with these characters again. I didn't love the story like The Christmas Memory, but it was fun to read. All right, the other book, oh, I forgot to say, before I went on the trip, I did finish Sure of You by Armistead Maupin. I talked about it quite a bit last week. I just found this really satisfying, and it's right in the middle of this series, but it was my favorite one so far, I think. Except maybe the first one is so much fun because you're getting started, but this one, at this point, I just really enjoyed the more mature tone, both for the characters and in the writing style. Maupin kind of sets aside some of these crazy madcap plots and really focuses on relationships in this one. And the heart of it all is when you're caught between two really close friends who are at odds with each other. There's two characters that are at a crossroads in their relationship, and my favorite character, Michael Tolliver, is caught between them because he's very close to both of these people. That's really what this story is about. And it's just about turning points in life in your 30s and 40s. Then we have all the wonderful San Francisco setting and the time period, which in this case is the late 80s. So there's nostalgia to it all. And there's substance, and they talk about the troubling things going on at that time, but there's also pop culture references. So it just it did it all for me. It was a comfort read, but it wasn't fluffy, and it was emotional, and it was just so satisfying. And so I'm very excited to go on through the second half of the series. And then the novel that I took and read on the trip, which I finished last night, was The Animators by Kayla Whitaker. This book has been waiting a good solid year on my cart for me to get to it. Well, eventually it just went to the shelf. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to put it away, and I am going to get to it. And then it's been out on my videos a million times. It was a haul, and then it's been on the TBR a couple times. Most recently in September, well, I guess most recently now, but in September it was there for Framed. And this would be a great selection for an art themed book, which I will explain why in just a minute. And then I guess I did put it in my December TBR, but I read it right in under the wire in November. So this book came to my attention about a year ago, as I said, when I was watching a video that Priscilla from the Evening Reader made, and it was a video about book covers, and this was one of the ones she selected, and then she talked about why she loves this book so much, and she's mentioned it a couple of times since then over the past year. But when she first mentioned it, I was captivated, and I found a copy, and I was like, yes, here it is. And then, you know, I did that thing you do where you don't read the book that you just had to have right that minute. So I got the book, but now I have finally read it, and I'm back to report that this was the perfect book for the occasion. I wanted a book that was engaging. I wanted a book with some substance, but that wasn't too dark and devastating. Although there are some really sad things that happen in this book. Some very emotionally powerful things do happen in this book, but it was just really good. So here's what it's about. Shall I set it down? I shall. So this book is about two women named Mel and Sharon. So Mel and Sharon meet in college as freshmen at an art school. They find each other. They're both taking a class with a very difficult professor who just likes to put people's work up in front of the room and then just rip it up one side and down the other. They go into his office one night to pick up Mel's sketchbook that she left behind, and while they're there, they break into his office and smoke his stash. So that's their first great night together. And they both go into the field of animation. Mel goes into college knowing that's what she wants to study. Sharon didn't exactly realize that that's where her talents should go until Mel sort of showed it to her. Although they both had a very shared history of being obsessed with cartoons and animated features that they would watch again and again. So they become this team in college, and they begin creating together. Mel and Sharon both find that they have similar backgrounds. They both are from Southern families, troubled families. Mel's mother is incarcerated. Sharon's family, it takes us a little while to find out about all the ways that they are messed up and complicated as well. and they're at a college that they have arrived to through a scholarship that is mostly made up of very wealthy kids. They're not really in sync with some of their classmates, but they find this bond together through shared experiences and then especially the artwork. Mel is a lesbian, Sharon is straight. People always mistake them for a couple because they are so intertwined. They work together, they live together, they have a shared bank account. They have a very intense relationship, personal and professional. And so after we establish them in college, it jumps forward about 10 years into they're like 30 years old. And they have just experienced their first success after working and just toiling away in a studio in Brooklyn for a decade and making short indie features. They have produced their first full-length movie that has gotten some critical acclaim. And so at this point, we jump in. They're getting all these interviews. They're going on tour, but Mel is kind of spiraling. And the movie itself has kind of set this off because it's a movie about her childhood and growing up with her mother. And I'm not going to get into all of it because it's interesting to read about it as you go. But it's not very far into the book, and you think, well, wait a minute. The book just started, and somebody's kind of hitting the skids here. What's going to happen here? Well, something unexpected does indeed happen, and this happens a couple of times in this book. You think you see where we're going, and then there's a turn in another direction. The plot is structured very well, and there are several dramatic and surprising events along the way. But the heart of the book is the two women and their relationship and how they rise and fall and step up and fall apart at different times throughout this book. I couldn't help but compare this to Gabrielle Zevin's book, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which I was disappointed in because that book was touted as being about this epic friendship of two creative people. They were game developers, and it was a man and a woman, and they met when they were kids, and it was supposed to be this great artistic and personal relationship. But most of the book, they were on the outs. They would have some kind of petty fight and then not talk to each other for long periods of time, and the characters were really exhausting. And I just kept feeling like it wasn't really what I wanted. And also, if you compare the art worlds in the two books, I am not I mean, I do enjoy graphic novel or occasionally an animated movie, but it's not my passion. But in this book, I really got into the description of their artistic process. It was really well written. There wasn't too much of it, but there was enough of it that you understood how hard the work was and what their creative process was and what each person's role was in this dynamic. And in Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, I went in not being interested in gaming. I read it not being interested in what they were doing, and I left still not being interested in gaming. So, I mean, the most interesting thing to me in the book was when they are playing the Oregon Trail at the very beginning, because that's one that I'm actually familiar with. So it just, I feel like in a lot of ways, this hit on all these cylinders that didn't quite spark for me in that other book, which was written later on and got a lot more attention than the Animators. This is just way more satisfying to me. I'm going to read you just one little description that was early on in the book, and I loved this description because when I read this, I knew exactly how Mel looked when she walked. And here it is. Oh, and I forgot to mention, this book isn't first person. It is from Sharon's perspective. So she's remembering, she's describing how Mel walks. In memory, I am a spectator, watching the tops of our heads bob through the banquet hall. Mel leads the way. The only person I've ever seen who walks like the theme from Sanford and Son is playing on a loop in her head. And so one theme that's really interesting in this book, the movies that Sharon and Mel make are autobiographical. Two movies in particular that are described in detail, the one at the beginning and then another movie that they make later on in the book. And one is drawn from Mel's life and growing up with her troubled mother, and the other one comes from Sharon's story. And in both cases, there are some really interesting issues and discussions about the nature of autobiographical storytelling and the fact that other people are inevitably going to be represented in that story. And what do you need their consent? And what if they don't want to be in that story? Do they have any say? Do you have any obligation or responsibility to people who might feel that they're suffering collateral damage from being presented in your artwork, in your story? It could be writing, it could be visual medium, whatever it is. And that comes up a number of times in this book. And it's not a clear-cut black and white conversation. People have really different points of view. There are some arguments about it. And in fact, that is one of the other strengths of this book. Kayla Ray Whitaker writes fights really well, verbal fights. There are some really hot fights in this book between Mel and Sharon, between Sharon and her mother, between people in relationships, between a lot of different people. And that's one of the issues that gets fought about, and other things come up as well. But I thought that was a really a big strength in the writing, was the way that she writes fights, the bombs that people drop either accidentally or on purpose, and the way that some of those linger on, and you circle back to them and you replay them and you change your takeaway and all of that. Very, very well done. So I feel like a book that I guess, I can't say it flew under the radar just because I never heard of it when it was new. I'm not that full of myself, but it flew under my radar. I'm glad that it came back around and that I read it. So finally I read The Animators and I really loved it. Today I am starting Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf by Edward Albee. This is now going to be a group read with Too Tight-Lautrec and A Book of Dust, Joe and Michael. And we were talking about it on Voxer. We found out that there are actually 2 editions of this. Or there was a revision in, I forgot what year it was, 2005. Edward Albee actually came back and revised it, and he took some things out. I don't know if he added anything, but he changed some things up, and I have the original edition, which would be the one I read back in the 80s. So it is about, there are 4 characters. George and Martha are a middle-aged couple, I think an academic couple, or at least George is a professor. Then there's a younger couple. They're getting together very late at night, and I think pretty drunk, and things are going to go all sideways and weird. So I'm really looking forward to it. Starting that today. I'm going to start something else too, because my docket is clear right now. My tendency is to keep picking up the shorter books and thinking, well, I'll just read all of these and then I'll be all caught up and I'll settle in with my longer choices. But you know what happens? New shorter books keep popping up. So I think I need to have a fast lane and a slow lane, and Edward Albee is going to be in the fast lane because plays read fast. So I think I'll save that slot for the shorter books. And maybe I actually will look at my 3 longer books for my TBR and choose one to start. Maybe. But I also have a book of short stories that is tantalizing me as well. But you're going to have to just wait and see what I decided to do when I check back in on Friday. So what's coming up this week? I'm not sure. I need to make a map of the videos that I want to make in December. I have a couple of tags and a book haul, and starting to think about some of those wrap-up type videos as well. I don't want to do them too soon because I'm not done reading. I might miss something that should be in the big top whatever. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about. I need to make a plan. I hope that you have, the weekend's kind of over, so I hope you have a good week coming up. I hope you are reading something really great. Tell me what it is in the comments, and I will be back to talk to you soon. Bye-bye.